Hello there, people of the internet. How's everybody doing today? I'm doing alright, thanks for asking. So, I have made many videos on the M1 Garand showing off this gorgeous piece of rifle right here. This is a 1952 production CMP refurbished M1 Garand. There's not a scratch on this thing. My goodness. Is she beautiful. I love videos where I get to show off my M1 Garand. But there's people out there who believe that the M1 Garand is the end-all be-all rifle that can absolutely dominate any battlefield and any situation, and it cannot be stopped under any circumstance. And anyone who knows anything about the M1 Garand knows that that is not true. I'm going to start off by saying I love the Garand. The Garand is probably my favorite gun. If I had to pick a, like there's plenty more practical guns out there, many other firearms that I would decide, you know, to use in any sort of actual situation over the Garand. But if I had to pick a favorite, the Garand would probably be it. Now I know exactly what you people, you disgusting degenerates, I know what you guys are wanting. Get ready. There's your Garand ping for all of you at home who clicked onto this video hoping to hear at least one of those. But I wanted to go ahead and make a video talking about the shortcomings, or the shortcomings of the M1 Garand right here. I have made many videos on how fantastic of a rifle this is, but there are a lot of shortcomings with this rifle. The rifle was designed in like the mid-1930s, and it was designed back before semi-automatic technology was really beginning to get figured out. Back then, people just didn't have the knowledge basis on the fundamental functionality of semi-automatic firearms that we have nowadays. And making a semi-automatic full-powered cartridge firearm took some development, and it took some effort and some patience, and they had a lot of problems with the system, and eventually it did get to the point to where it worked reliably with that downgraded ammunition. The biggest downside to the M1 Garand is the gas operating system. If you end up using ammunition hotter than the M1 Garand was actually designed for, then you'll end up bending your operating rod over time. There's people out there that run commercial ammo through this thing and they'll claim that it runs just fine. And then there's people like me who, you know, will say, all right, well, if you say it runs fine, I'm not going to believe you. I've seen literal physical evidence that proves that Garands ran on commercial ammunition operate much harder than Garands run on the actual military grade ammunition. I believe it was Forgotten Weapons, but it might have been In Range TV, where they had actual slow motion camera footage of them running commercial versus surplus ammunition through a Garand, and how much harsher the commercial ammo was. Over time, if you run enough of that ammunition through your rifle, you will bang up the rifle and do some damage to it. That's why it's important to have some sort of updated gas system inside of your Garand if you decide to go with anything besides the original intended ammunition. And for those people that tell me that theirs runs fine on commercial ammo, I'll ask them how much they ran. 100 rounds, 200 rounds, etc., etc. I own a gun channel. I run several thousand rounds through my rifles whenever I can get my hands on the ammunition. Your 200 rounds or 300 rounds or 400 rounds of commercial ammunition through an M1 Garand does not impress me. You know, stick another 0 on that thing, and if your Garand is still alive, then we'll talk. But the gas system is definitely one of the biggest shortcomings with the Garand. Supposedly it bends the operating rod. Like I said, I've seen physical evidence on just how much harsher the Garand is ran whenever it is exposed to commercial ammunition. Another big downside for the Garand is the in-block clip feeding system. Back when these rifles were being created and developed, in-block, or not in-block, internal magazines were pretty much standard for all of your mainstream infantry rifles back in the day. And I believe that the in-block clip monolicker style, well, not necessarily monolicker, just the in-block clip style of feeding mechanism on this thing pretty much evolved from the necessity of them wanting some sort of internal magazine in their rifle. Now, after World War II, they experimented with the Garands that were, you know, external magazines, but those never really panned out until we hit Mini 14 or M14 territories. Now, I do not have an M14 in my arsenal, but I do have a Mini 14, which actively serves our purposes. For all mechanical aspects besides the gas system, this right here fundamentally works basically the same way as the M1 Garand. but our feeding mechanism is different because the M14 or Mini 14, or both M14 and Mini 14, feed from an external magazine. In this particular case, I have a 5-round external magazine feeding into the Mini 14, just like that. Now the Garand, as much as I love its 30-06 chambering, 30-06 is not the ideal battle cartridge. It is a very long, powerful cartridge. It can touch out to some pretty significant distances, but on a rifle rigged with iron sights, the 30-06 is just, it's too much power for just a standard battle rifle. In my opinion, like I said, people out there are gonna definitely disagree with everything I have to say in this video. The biggest downside, I feel like, by a wide margin with the Garand, is the exposed bolt right here. Right here is your actual bolt of the rifle, and it is exposed to the elements. And on the back of the receiver is this little open slot where gunk, dirt, debris, sand, whatever it is that you're doing, you know, funk can get in there and, you know, get inside the trigger housing, get inside the hammer assembly, get between the firing pin and the hammer. I mean, who the hell knows what it is that you're doing and why your Garand is as dirty as it is. But there's other much more closed up systems that operate much better than something that has a massive gaping hole in the side of the receiver like that. It's taking everything in my power not to talk about all the things I love about the Garand, because I love the Garand so much. But this is a video talking about the shortcomings. So in summary, gas system, not great. You gotta update it if you're gonna run any real amount of commercial ammunition. Bolt exposed. There's a huge opening in the receiver. The feeding system, as much as I love the Garand ping, as a matter of fact, here's a second one for you. Ah, that's nice. As much as I love the Garand ping, having an 8-round internal in-block clipped feeding system just is not ideal. It is not something that I would recommend for a battlefield on the modern day battlefields. Back during World War II, and potentially, you know, during Korea and just during that general time period, that would have been absolutely fine for the rifles that you were going up against. But for modern day conflicts, I would definitely not recommend the Garand. The beauty about rifles that feed from an external magazine and not an in-block clip like the Garand does is I don't need a full magazine to load this thing into this rifle comfortably. Granted, you know, I've loaded 4, 5, 6 rounds into the Garand just because that was all I had at the time. But if you want to load the Garand comfortably, you have to load full magazines into the receiver. Otherwise, it is quite difficult to load the Garand. And loading it, half loading it under pressure is not something that I would recommend you doing. In order to half load the Garand, you'd have your empty Garand clip, you set it into the rifle, and then you would just very slowly insert cartridges into the clip, trying to keep it to, like, you got to keep enough tension on it to where the cartridges don't like fall over or anything. And then whenever you get, you know, your set amount of cartridges in there, you would then push it into the rifle and lower your bolt home and drive one into the chamber. And then you would be able to use the Garand, you know, as necessary. Here's another Garand clip noise for you. Whereas if you had a fully loaded clip, as a matter of fact, I might just get myself some of those 5-round clips just to make life so much easier on me. If you had a fully loaded clip, then you could just take that 8-round clip, cram it into your receiver, push it down, ride the bolt home, and then you could get to work. But as life has so often presented to me, there are times where you will not have access to a full clip of ammunition. And for rifles that do not rely on an in-block clip system, that's not really that big of a deal. I can load a, you know, standard capacity magazine of 30 rounds. I can load that with 10 rounds, 20 rounds, 17 rounds, 4 rounds, 1 round, and it'll operate just fine. And loading it into the rifle will be just as easy as, you know, it would be if it was at full capacity, unlike the M1 Garand. Now, it's not just the Garand that has a lot of these different shortcomings. Let me turn this on real quick. A lot of these different shortcomings. I brought out my Mini 14 because fundamentally it has a lot of these same shortcomings as well, just because it is wholeheartedly based off of the same sort of operating system. On this, we have an external magazine that I can load to any capacity that I want. So that is definitely a perk for the Mini 14 and M14 systems. The gas system is no longer a, with lack of a better term, the gas system on this one is not nearly as finicky or as weak as the gas system on the Garand. The Mini 14 and M14, although they do have adjustable gas systems, or at least several versions of them do, they are capable of running several types of ammunition without the gun actually receiving any sort of damage, unlike the 30-06 and the M1 Garand. However, the 308s and the 223 cartridge are also, you know, less of a round than the 30-06 is. So the gas system and the feeding system are definitely improvements on the Mini 14 and the M14. However, the exposed bolt and the big gaping hole in the back of the receiver are definitely still downsides on just this operating system. This right here, fundamentally, like, this is just how this operating system fundamentally works. On the AK-47, the operating system is pretty much identical to the M1 Garand without all of the shortcomings. The bolt is no longer exposed, it's on the bottom of the bolt carrier group. The operating rod is much more stable of a platform for the 7.62x39. You're not going to worry about, you know, firing hot 7.62x39 and bending your operating rod. But this video isn't about the AK-47. I tend to go off on little tangents and whatnot on these videos. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I have a couple of rounds of 223 inside of this Mini 14, and I figure, hey, why the hell not? Let's send them downrange. I recently took this thing out to the range not too terribly long ago, and I rediscovered a love for it. As a matter of fact, I just bought a bunch of 223 ammunition for it. Now I get to play with it. Oh boy. So hopefully I didn't rustle too many jimmies in this video. The M1 Garand, like I said, is probably my favorite rifle, but it has a lot of shortcomings, and it's not something that I would actively go to in any sort of practical situation. But it's one of the rifles that I love to show off. I mean, this thing, hell, I showed it off at the very start of the video. So, as you can see, this is one of the rifles that I absolutely love to show off. That being said, I think that this is everything that I have to say about this video. Lots of perks, lots of good things about the M1 Garand. But that's not one of the things that we're going to be talking about in this video. So I'm just going to say, hey guys, thanks for watching. If you like this kind of stuff, subscribe to the channel, because as you can see from the card down there, I do this kind of stuff all the time. If you like the video, do me a favor and actually like the video. That helps out with YouTube's algorithm. Description down below has a link to all sorts of stuff, including an email sign-up list. That is my emergency go-to just-in-case platform in case something happens to this channel. And that being said, I think I'm out of things to say. That being said, I think I'm out of things to say. That's a good saying right there. I'm going to go to the gun store. I don't know, I have the hankering to go to the gun store. You ever get that feeling like, you know, you don't have money to buy anything, you might pick up some ammo or something, or maybe you'll see something that you could put on layaway. You know how that song and dance goes. I might find something worthy of getting my hands on. I shouldn't go to the gun store, but I'm going to go to the gun store. Thanks for watching, guys. You guys go off, have yourself a fantastic day. Maybe I'll shoot something before the sun goes down. I'll go to the gun store after the sun starts going down. I'm going to enjoy the range then. I'll figure out what I'm doing. You guys go off, have a fantastic day. Since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. Poor man's Garand.
Shame that bolt action shotguns aren't more mainstream.